जी सर, जी सर, जी सर, आपको एंड ऑफ द डे पे मिल जाएगा सर, बिल्कुल। यस सर। दिस बॉस नो। हे यू नो, आई वर्क 8 आवर्स अ डे। सिर्फ सैटरडे और संडे ऑफ मिलता है। एक हफ्ते की छुट्टी पे जाना चाहता था, उसके लिए भी बॉस की अभी परमिशन चाहिए मुझे। मैन, आई फील लाइक आई हैव द हार्डेस्ट जॉब इन द वर्ल्ड।
One sec.
या श्योर।
Yes, sir.
Major Anand, your vacation has been cut short. I need you at the HQ at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, sharp.
On my way, sir. Jai Hind. See you.
They stand tall and proud, the guardians of our nation, the Indian Army soldier, the protector of our people. They leave behind the comfort of their homes just to defend ours, and we must never forget their sacrifice. Remember that a nation's currency and infrastructure may be powerful, but they're only as strong as the army that protects them. In today's video, we will give you some key insights into the backstage of the world's second largest army, our Indian Army. As India rises in stature economically and technologically towards a more eminent position in the region and the world, it has to concurrently build upon its military power to thwart the threats and challenges that it's likely to face along the way from our potential adversaries. India has a land frontier of 15,200 kilometers and a coastline of 7,500 kilometers and shares borders with around 7 countries. India's threats, though, primarily come from the historically inherited territorial disputes involving the two nuclear-armed neighbors, China and Pakistan, over which we have already fought 5 wars since independence. The Indian Armed Forces are made up of the Indian Army, Indian Navy and Indian Air Force. The Indian Army is the largest branch of the armed forces and is responsible for protecting the country's land borders. The Indian Navy is responsible for protecting the country's maritime borders and maintaining control of the country's coastal waters. The Indian Air Force is responsible for maintaining air superiority and providing air support to other branches of the armed forces. There are also other entities that fall under Central Armed Police Forces like BSF, ITBP, but today we are only throwing light on Indian Armed Forces. According to the Global Firepower Annual Defense Report 2022, India's military is the 4th most powerful out of 140 countries across the world. The US occupies the top slot with the power index score of 0.045. Russia backs the second rank with a score of 0.0501, followed by China and India at 0.0979. This global firepower index uses over 50 factors including manpower, weapon diversity to calculate a country's potential war-making capabilities. Let's start with manpower, which is one key aspect of India's military strength. Next is the on-ground forces. In the 2022 rankings, India is placed in the top 5 in 2 categories under the land forces category, specifically combat tank fleet size and towed artillery. In the latter, India ranks 3rd after Russia and South Korea, while China and the US rank 10th and 12th respectively. India also has the 5th largest tank fleet. However, it lags behind when it comes to the more modern self-propelled artillery systems, ranking 37th, and it has also been overtaken by countries like Pakistan, Egypt, Turkey, Ukraine, and some European nations. So, India has around 100 such systems, China has 4,120, and Russia has the largest fleet with 6,574. The Indian Army currently has 93 modernization projects in progress at various stages in the procurement process, with a total value of $18.4 billion as per the latest figures. Coming to naval forces, India has the 7th largest naval fleet among the 140 nations considered by GFP, with 295 warships and submarines in total, while China tops the chart with 777. Although a smaller percentage of India's military personnel are actively serving compared to other countries like China and America, India has a large paramilitary force and reserve military personnel that can be called into service at any given moment.
Hey soldier, any last words? Back up.
This accounts for 36.8 lakh personnel, which is 3 times the comparative figure for China. In terms of total available military personnel, India boasts a headcount of 51 lakh people, far ahead of China's 31 lakh. Coming to Air Force, India has the 4th largest air force in the world, but its aging fleet has been a point of concern. The GFP report shows a large gap between India and the top 3 countries when it comes to air power. In terms of total air fleet strength, the US is more than 6 times bigger than India, and the Russian fleet size is nearly 2 times larger. While the overall gap with China is comparatively much narrower, India lags behind when it comes to specialized aircraft and helicopters. For example, in terms of attack helicopters, which are a very important component in providing fire support against armored vehicles, China has 281 such helicopters, whereas India only has 37. However, there's some good news. India's naval fleet is rapidly expanding and already fares well in rankings for specialized vessels. For example, India ranks 4th, 5th, and 6th in the categories of corvettes, multi-role frigates, and destroyers respectively. India's second aircraft carrier, the first indigenous one called Vikrant, is scheduled to be inducted into the Indian Navy, while China is currently readying to launch its third one. On the downside though, India does not own a single countermine warfare ship and lags behind not just the developed nations but also neighbors Bangladesh, which has 5 such vessels, and Pakistan, which has 3. As our country rises economically and technologically, it has to keep building its military prowess. In the last decade, the defense budget has grown at an annual average rate of 9%, but this increase is barely keeping up with the inflation and the demands of the 3 services. The thing is, people think this rise of Indian armed forces is because of the Indian government alone, but it is actually an effort that is made by all parties, including armed forces, government, people, and even companies. For example, companies like Mahindra, who is one of the oldest automobile companies and famous for their collaboration with the Indian Armed Forces. Mahindra's growth over the years has truly been nothing short of amazing. They've gone from creating SUVs that were so powerful that the Indian Army used them to now being focused on creating EVs for the common Indian man. They recently launched the new EV XUV 400, and not only is it incredibly fast, it can go from 0 to 100 km/h in 8.3 seconds, but it also focuses on one thing that usually gets a lot of people worried, which is the range. Their range is 456 kilometers on one full charge. They have truly produced a best-in-class car with best-in-class torque, cabin, boot space, and best-in-industry dust and waterproof battery pack and motor. If you're interested, the e-SUV bookings open on 26 January with price starting at 15.99 lakh. Now back to the video. Have you ever sat and imagined what would the state of our country be like if we didn't have the armed forces? It's not just external conflict and terrorist attacks. The army also plays a very crucial role in maintaining the balance of power within a nation, basically creating an equilibrium of power among states. In the absence of strong military, a power vacuum is likely to emerge, which can result in utter chaos and instability. We could have civil wars. Just like without a strong foundation, a building would collapse under the pressure of natural disasters and external forces. Without a strong military, a nation would be vulnerable to invasions and internal conflicts. That is why investment in the modernization of forces, equipping them with the best-in-class equipment, right from the boot of a soldier to bulletproof jacket to helmet to weapons, is absolutely imperative. The thing is, the average man forgets. We forget about these soldiers and their sacrifice because we fail to recognize that the reason we are safe today, leading these super comfortable lives, living in our houses with no fear of someone attacking us, is because of them. It's because they are out there in the cold, alert, day in, day out, risking their lives, not worried about their safety, just for us. And I don't say this for the sake of saying it. My own father served in the army for 20 years, so I've seen it with my own eyes. They truly do put nation and duty above everybody else. You know, I still remember I was around 4 years old, I think, and my dad was going on leave. When one night, one of our unit ka soldier bhaiyas, they came home to my dad and they're like, "Saab, aapki chutti cancel ho gayi hai. Kargil war has started and you have to leave immediately." He had a duty towards the nation, right? So he left, and he left me and my mom, who was pregnant with my little sister that time. And we had no idea if he's gonna come back. And we didn't have mobiles back then. All we had was news, and all we saw was news of how people are losing their lives, how many soldiers' bodies have been carried back to the city. It was so scary. And months went by, my sister was finally about to be born, and my dad was still not back. And he had sent us these letters saying, I don't know if I'll make it back, but name my daughter Lychee and tell her dad named her that if I don't return to tell her myself. So Lychee was finally born on 7th July, and a week later we found out that my dad was severely injured because of a mine blast at Kargil war and was being flown down to Srinagar. I was too young to understand what was happening, but it was havoc, right? He was literally in hospital for 1 whole month, and after that he was brought back to Agra, and that's when he finally got to see his daughter, like after a whole month. Think about it. Nobody wants to be in such a situation. Nobody wants to be so far away from their family. And it didn't end here. After this, again, my dad was posted away for 2 years around Jammu and Kashmir while me, my sister and my mom stayed away. And it's not just about him. The whole Indian armed forces sacrifice a lot so people like you and I can be safe. We just want to salute them and pay an ode to each and every one of them. They're the true heroes, and their sacrifice and efforts will never ever be forgotten. So let's all take a moment to honor these brave Indian Army soldiers and their courage and dedication.